Okay. And then came the demise of the DACs, and what I call the opening of the Wild West, in the sense that all rules were thrown out the window. You didn't have to be a DAC examiner now, which meant that you no longer had to have 3 or 5 years of experience before even becoming an examiner, so becoming an IE, insurer examiner. There were no rules in terms of peer review, meaning that if I'm going to be reviewing an OCF 18, it has to be by another psychologist, by another social worker, chiropractor, etc. It meant as well that there was no true consensus building from the standpoint of the rules that were in place before, by way of the CAT-DAC manual, which mandated that there will always be at least one, if not a series, of case conferences involving the full team. Nor did you have to continue to maintain a clinical practice in the area. So there's no requirement right now for an IE who's doing an OCF 18 review, for example, or in any type of IE work. You don't have to have maintained or continue to maintain a clinical practice. All that was part of the DACs before, and we're hoping actually to bring that back into the system because I think it's an important element. So we lost community consensus. It went from 7 DACs that were very, were the only players, to basically anyone could open their shingle. Any IE center, brand new, existing, it didn't matter, could potentially say that they now do CAT impairment work. And despite the elapsed time at that point, from 1996 to 2006 or 7, there had never actually been any case law telling us whether we were right to use the 1981 approach. We all felt comfortable, we all did it, but ultimately it does require case law, as we saw with the GCS interpretation. The case law said no, not at 6 hours. It could be any reasonable time. We never had that kind of case law basically rubber stamping our approach. So the other thing was that it became somewhat intuitive that perhaps the newer definition was a little bit too liberal. So let's say if somebody had some mild residual paralysis, on the basis of that couldn't put on their socks. Intellectually, does that really suggest somebody who's necessarily catastrophically impaired? Not really. That didn't really bother us though, because don't forget that when it comes to catastrophic impairment, not a penny flows from just being designated catastrophically impaired. Maybe case management is automatically, but case management's not going to make sense if the person hasn't any surfaces going on. But basically, you can't spend $1 more in treatment or rehab unless you still meet the reasonable necessary test. There's still going to be an OCF 18 requesting some services. And just because a person has CAT because they couldn't put their socks on, they're not going to get services if it's not reasonable and necessary, which is one of the reasons at the CAT-DAC level we thought, well, even though it's a little bit liberal for some cases, that second level will catch them. We felt it would be much better to really get people who really have the need and get more people coming through the door, and then letting the next level kind of do its work. And then many IE assessors were unaware of the revised Glasgow Outcome Scale. So none of them sought out the old CAT-DAC manual to tell them how to interpret these things, how to do assessments correctly. It literally became the Wild West. It's a hybrid. It runs on mom or dad. So a hybrid approach is basically what I've really encouraged since the demise of the DACs, and principle that I use, and a number of centers use it, certainly not exclusively. As I say, many are kind of unaware of this history and haven't had even any training in CAT work. So the hybrid approach is one of looking at the pragmatic operationalization of the term independent functioning and the broader life impacts. So somebody who can't put their socks on as the only substantive daily impairment, it's hard to make the point that that's a broad life impact. Okay? So literally any daily assistance is too liberal. However, when it comes to sole independent areas of functional loss that would be more impactful